Sourcing as a model. As we go down, it is drug discovery. You need serious collaboration from the industry, contract research organizations. And at clinical trials, we are partnering with a large number of publicly funded organizations. And in the case of diseases without market, probably there is no alternative to government funding. And government will fund, we have the commitment from the government to fund the clinical trials in this case. And if a drug comes out, it will be available for the generic industry without any IP encumbrances. As the UN delegate had pointed out, competition at the marketplace should keep the price at affordable levels. We believe that markets should make the drug affordable and accessible. In the last Global Innovation Roundtable, the Nesta representatives were here. They heard about OSDD, and they plotted OSDD as one which can reduce the cost as well as improve the innovation process. So how do we crowdsource? TB as a problem is not known to many people. How do we bring the voice of the pure TB patients to people like you, innovators, movers and shakers in government? In order to crowdsource public opinion, we have opened a challenge asking people to get short video, 5 minutes short video about the need of new drugs for TB, upload it on YouTube. This competition has just been announced today. There are a number of attractive prizes. First prize is 50,000, but to get a large number of entries, we are announcing about 20 merit prizes of 10,000 each, which in India is a considerable sum. We have reached out to all media schools to see how the community voice can be brought together to plead for the need of new drugs for tuberculosis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zaki. I think we had excellent 6 presentations over the last 40 minutes. One thing that came out loud and clear is that crowdsourcing has immense potential. What is required is to understand how do we really bridge the need for the innovation with the mechanism of crowdsourcing that we need to do. From updating the Google map to doing the open drug discovery, there's a wide plethora of applications or problems that we can really look at and work it out. I would now like the participants to have questions, maybe for about 7-8 minutes, and then we can really wrap up the sessions. So the questions, please. Yes, please. But do we have this? Is your mic working?
Crowd educated to some extent on what needs to be done. So what are the thoughts on that aspect?
Zaki, would you like to?
From our experience in doing a number of crowdsourced projects, we feel that training is an important component. We need to, once we identify the projects, we draw up an SOP, and whoever is interested, we take them through pilot phases and train them online. That enables us to let the communities then start work themselves.
We do a lot of development work on the ground, and I was just very curious about your comment on when you do crowdsourcing, you have to be aware of instant gratification for the crowd. How do you do that?
Hello. So it's not easy. You have to figure out the system for the particular crowdsourcing application that you're talking about. In our case, so I'll give you a very simple example. There's a couple of mentions of YouTube. So what you really don't realize is that when you hit play on a YouTube video, it takes 4 seconds before it starts playing, 3 to 4 seconds. And, but in those 3 to 4 seconds, there is this circle that comes up and it keeps rotating until it starts playing. And if you actually put your finger on where the circle appears and hit play, it feels a lot more disconcerting. So sometimes you actually have to tell the user when they can expect gratification, even if you cannot give them instant gratification. So one example is when a new user, for example, who is mapping, comes on board, it typically takes few hours to a day for their first few edits to go live before the machine learning system starts building trust in what they're doing. And we then have a predictive algorithm that tells them, based on the region and how much mapping we are seeing and our backlog, how much time to expect before before the edit that they made goes live. Not that different than what Amazon does when you buy on Amazon.com, right? It tells you almost exactly to the hour when your shipment will arrive. And the other thing we had to do is to actually build a very, very complex system to make edits go live on maps. And what we mean by that is, let's suppose a trusted user comes on board, and the other thing about crowdsourcing is most of the activity comes from a very small number of power users. So if you take the drug discovery example that we just heard from Zakir, and if you ask him how many people actually contributed to the heart of it, I bet it'll be a very small number, like tens of people, right? And thousands of people might have touched it, but the tens of people are the reason why you're actually building the crowdsourcing system for any region or any problem. And for those people, you have to make it zero friction. And what we had to do for those few hundred people on MapMaker, for example, who are contributing most of our maps, is to build a system where from the time when a user edits a road or adds a new road, assuming it's a trusted user, it's less than 5 minutes, 3 sigma, before the change that they made goes live on maps.google.com and is now loading on millions of people's maps instantly. And if those of you who are computer scientists, if you can imagine the system complexity it takes to actually take the edit, curate it, have confidence in it, build it into the global graph, and push it out to something like 40 data centers worldwide, and have it then pushed to your mobile, which is serving the map, in 5 minutes. It's a very hard problem. It's doable. Any computer scientist worth his salt will be able to solve this problem if you give them the problem, but it'll take many man years. But we did that because we realized that instant gratification is very, very important for those users who are there. And it's not the only thing that's important. I did not mention that the value that the user gets out of it is important. So in our case, people are doing it out of altruism or mapping their region. In some cases, for example, like Mechanical Turk, people are doing it out of monetary reasons. So there are many reasons, but each of them matter, and you have to take care of each of those reasons very, very carefully.
Yeah, this is to the for the collective wisdom of the crowdsourcing panel. What would be the top 3 to 5 motivating factors for the crowds for crowdsourcing to happen? So we heard instant gratification, we heard big prize money. What would that be? And a little elaboration on the prize money piece. $100,000 for the challenge. Would it work at $50,000? Would it work for $10,000? So a little elaboration on that.
I don't know the answer to the question. I think averages in a country like this are really uninformative, right? So it's more about the ability of crowdsource to segment markets, because there will be a group that will respond to 10,000 rupees and another that will respond to 10 million rupees. And getting the right impedance match between the incentives and the skill set is, I think, one of the bigger challenges.
Well, if you ask me what are the key motivating factors, I think motivation itself is one of the key factors that will let the crowd do the work. And we also need to tap unseen incentives that are available. Like, large number of engineering students do need to do projects. So can we tap these available talent and the need which they have to solve some of the problems. These kind of unseen incentives need to be worked on.
Thank you. Any other? Yeah. Sorry, we can't push it there.
Now, there's been a lot of research and a lot of practice, especially in countries like India, on intangible heritage, on looking at the power of light to create vitamin D, or the power of sound to, vibrational medicine, and there's a lot of research going on. So, are you engaging in that kind of dialogue in this platform that you have? Secondly, to Dr. Small, we're working with a lot of women, and we're looking at how we can do skills training in intangible heritage for wellness. So how could we, how would we talk to each other in seeing that this increases the knowledge, the practice, the clinical trials, and implementation on the ground? How can we work together to make this happen?
So, as you rightly said, India is a country rich in traditional knowledge. And we, in the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, there's a project called Traditional Knowledge Digital Library, which is headed by Dr. V.K. Gupta sitting there. And Dr. Gupta would be speaking about it tomorrow. And we are actively collaborating with the TKDL team in the open source drug discovery platform. In addition, we have a large number of Ayurveda doctors who are actually working online on some projects which have been funded as well.
Well, I've only lived in India for a year, so there's my fund of ignorance about your various medical systems is enormous. But I think that the way to have a conversation with the foundation on this topic is to send a 2-page proposal, and it will get serious consideration along with all the others. And that's the beauty of this, is that all of these things don't get filtered ahead of time with preconceptions, but rather unified by a kind of a goal and a vision.
We all agree that crowdsourcing has immense potential because we have 6-7 billion people which can be part of the crowd because of the connectivity that we have today available. And therefore, this type of problems that we can tackle are also enormous. It's like electricity you can use for any purpose that you like. Knowing that there's such a vast potential, we are at the beginning of trying to learn how the crowdsourcing could really be exploited. We need to understand even how to identify the problem that we need to put to the crowd. How do we really articulate that problem so that the crowd understands, because it's not the set of people who have been trained for a specific type of jobs, and therefore we need to articulate it. We need to create communities, try and build mechanisms, and as was mentioned, have training for them so that they are able to participate in the crowdsourcing process. Also, we need to really look at, will there be business models that we need to create? Will the crowd always be doing a social work, or we need to create business models for it? And last but not the least is the technology issue. How do we make sure that we have technology which is ubiquitous, available to everybody, and also we have tools. For example, what Samir was mentioning, the tools to be able to find out, analyze the data with large volume that we collect, and be able to handle the type of information that we generate automatically. Now, that's the dimension of the problem. All of us really agree that there is a need to put a lot more effort than what we had been doing so far. It should be a systematic effort that we are able to pursue it on an ongoing basis as part of the work that we are talking about. And as I mentioned, my feeling is that it may be worthwhile to try and work out a group which explores and examines all options, right from the type of applications, because they may be region specific, they may be problem specific, the type of technology that we should bring in, how do we really propagate, so that as a collaborative measure, we can try and push this envelope together so that all of us, all different countries could really use it. One of the models that you saw was a model that Samir mentioned about the open source platform for the data.gov. So issue here is that is it worthwhile for us? And that's what I'm really throwing it open to the group here. Should we try and work out a group, and who should be the members who could take part in the group so that we can take it further and see that all the points that have been discussed today by the panel and by the group could really be pushed through further and have some plan built for the next meeting. So that's a suggestion that I have, and I would like to you to respond as to how do we really proceed further on this issue. Please.
This is, I don't know if this is working.
Yeah, take this.
You know, I had actually an interesting idea. It might be very interesting to just even among us have a little crowdsource experiment to figure out the best practices of how to do crowdsourced innovation. We have a lot of ideas that came about here. I think Latish was mentioning, you know, instant gratification. You know, one of the questions was, is it 50K, 100K? You know, what are these things that really drive good practices for crowdsourced innovation? And we can just crowdsource that among ourselves and maybe just get a group together. If maybe each country participant can just sort of nominate, you know, one person can just act as a sort of a coordinator. We can just try a few things ourselves. And maybe the first topic is, you know, collecting the best practices of how do you really do well-intentioned crowdsourced innovation. And then that way we can collect all of our shared experiences. And that will at least let us get started. And then maybe from that we can then sort of expand certain other topics. That was just a thought I had, Dr. Garola.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very good idea. Maybe certain comments from the participants, please. Yes, please. Do you have the mic there?
Yes, hello, hi, I'm Gail Davenport from the World Bank Institute. I'm a colleague of Drew's. And we have, in the last couple of years, been experimenting with a number of web-based competitions. Some of you may have heard of the Apps for Development or the Apps for Climate competition. And we've done actually quite a bit of research on the sorts of incentives that can be helpful depending on the target audience. So we actually did a stock taking of all of the apps challenges that had been done. So we have some things we'd be happy to share in terms of incentives and some of the things that we've learned. And there's quite a community that's developed in North America over the last few years, and people running global challenges. So I'd be happy to be one of the linkages with that network.
Thank you very much.
The suggestion I had is to pick a focus area. This is here, Gopi.
Yes, yes, please.
To pick a focus area, and I really think the biosciences and molecular biology area might be a great area to pick, and build a platform around that kind of a focus area where you could crowdsource and leverage the demographics of this country. Something like gene sequencing is a perfect problem to crowdsource. And so, and along with that, investigate various aspects. Why not just pay? I mean, for each packet of work product, you have a standard payment after verifying the quality or something like that.
Sure. Zaki, would you like to comment on how do we proceed on it?
Yeah, it is possible, I mean, from our experience, it is possible to do a number of activities on the open source drug discovery model, and particularly, gene annotation and related matters which are knowledge based, information based. That is relatively easy, and that enables us to gather the information available in a platform that is much more amenable to analysis, as well as dealing with a huge amount of data that biology throws up these days. We need intelligent systems and programs to analyze those data. So that is an area definitely which we can work on.
So what I had in mind also is the world brings its problems in this area to this platform, and India provides the platform as well as the people because of our demographics to solve the toughest problems of the world. So it's not about one company I'm talking about. I'm talking about a national level platform which can solve the toughest problems in the world in these areas.
Thank you. I think if we do not have any more suggestions or questions, I think we would like to close this session. Thank you very much for attending very patiently the thing. We are about 5 minutes late. I think it's a lunch time for us. Thank you very much.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I request all of you to take your seats, and we'll start with the next session. And this is what I would call probably one of the more key sessions that we could have, because we've talked about innovation all morning, but innovation is of very little value if you don't actually end up taking it from an idea, from a lab, and creating a product or a service and a business model through which you can take it to the people that you want to serve. To do that, you need to fund innovation. So in this session, that's what we're going to do. Let me very quickly introduce a great panel that we have here. My co-chair on my left, Vikram Gandhi, who's a colleague with us. And at the Innovation Council, we're doing the India Inclusive Innovation Fund, which we'll talk about. Vikram and I are involved in doing that. We then have Dr. Marco Zanetti, and he's the Commissioner for Economic Development of the Veneto region. We have on my right, Dr. Giora Yoron, Chairman, Executive Council of Tel Aviv University. We have Ms. Sujata Lamba, who's Director, Finance and Private Sector Development of the World Bank, on the left. Then we have Meenakshi Nath, who's the Deputy Head for DFID, UK's Department for International Development. So Royston Briganza on my right, he's CEO of Grameen Capital. And then Mr. Subrata Berman, who's the Operations Officer for IFC. So we heard all morning, as I kick off the session, I'd say we heard all morning about how important innovation is. And indeed, all our lives today, for all of us in this room, are immensely better because of innovation. The mobile phone, the internet, everything we take for granted, that's what innovation has done. And the reason that has worked is because the world discovered a model, a financial model, through which it could invest in risk, through which it could invest in enterprise and entrepreneurs that would actually take innovation, create out of it products, services, business models, take it out to people, scale, and create disproportionate impact. And it changed all our lives. And it basically got trillions of dollars invested in innovation. That's what the model did. But that model has worked very well so far in solving the problems, and maybe I shouldn't use the word, Sam says, the rich have no problems to solve. So solving the needs of the affluent. But when it comes to the needs of the poor, the base of the economic pyramid, then so far, there are two modes of capital that we use, philanthropy and government grants. Now, both are very necessary, particularly for the poorest of the poor, we do need to have them. But they both have one challenge, that they do not scale enough. And for a country like India, where we're seeking to reach not 100,000, a million, or 10 million, we're seeking to reach hundreds of millions, we need to do things on scale. And the challenge we have with philanthropy, it's a limited pool of capital. Globally, in India, it's even smaller. The best global practice says 1% of PBT for CSR, which means a company doing $1 billion or $2 billion would have maybe $1 million to contribute to CSR. It is spent through non-governmental organizations who do phenomenal work, who are very passionate about what they do, but it's not their focus to create sustainable, scalable organizations. So they don't. So when the money stops, the good work stops. You look at government grants, many of the same issues, and in fact, sometimes they're not even as effective. So in the Innovation Council, I just wanted to put that as a backdrop. One of the things that we chose to do is also create an innovation, create a large pool of capital, a fund, and that fund would in effect leverage the model that's been used for the rich, the venture capital model, do the same thing, attract the best brains in India and in the world, but this time to focus on solving the problems of the poor, but in a scalable, sustainable way, so that once we put in capital, the organization or the venture or the activity can continue to scale and therefore create disproportionate impact. And that's what we are trying to do in the Innovation Council. When we look around globally, it seems to me that there are many countries in the world that are beginning to experiment with this kind of a model, which adds to what we're doing through philanthropy, through government grants. And in some ways, we end up creating another class of capital where you can say to investors, we will give you financial returns, but modest financial returns. However, they will be coupled with some measurable social returns. If we can succeed in doing this, then beyond philanthropy and government grants, we would have another asset class, just as came out for pure venture capital, for this kind of capital. And this model, in the beginning, at this stage, we will learn from all of you who have attempted that. We are engaged with the whole ecosystem that's working on it. But hopefully we will then learn some lessons that we can share with everybody else. So with that, with just those few words about the India Inclusive Innovation Fund, we're targeting it to be $1 billion because we will actually work on creating an inclusive ecosystem. So it's not that we'll just invest in ventures that have to scale. We would invest in grassroots ventures. We would invest in seed stage. We'd work with and invest in incubators. We're creating a mentoring network. Overall, we would try and create an ecosystem that actually works for all the people engaged in this area. And that is something that we have already started to do. So with that, let me pass this on to Dr. Zanetti for his comments.
I have some slides. I don't know if they are ready to show. Okay. Just while we are loading up, maybe I'll just add one thing, and maybe if some of the panelists could address this question. Clearly, there seems to be a lot more interest in what now is a buzzword of impact investing, social investing, which is really what the India Inclusive Innovation Fund in the context of what Saurabh just said is. And three questions as we've kind of evolved and developed this in India here. You know, the three kind of issues that come up is one is what's the right target audience in terms of raising the capital? And clearly a lot of family foundations, governments, et cetera, and companies have started moving some of their charitable dollars to something like this. So what is the source and any ideas on that? Second is how do you get the best talent? While it's important to say that, and obviously we do want to get the best talent to focus on the bottom of the pyramid, the fact of the matter is it's not easy to do because the best talent would also have to take some sort of financial sacrifice, et cetera, to do that. So how do you kind of go about doing that and what are the lessons learned there? And the third is the whole issue of how do you measure? So financial return for a fund or like this is easy to measure, it's there. How do you actually measure social impact? How do you measure whether a fund or pool of capital that's being diverted to something like this in terms of the bottom of the pyramid, how do you measure social impact to make sure that the mission that you started on is actually achieved? So if the panelists could somehow weave that into their comments, I think it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Great, great, Dr. Zanetti.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity of talking about our regional experiences
in facilitating innovative investment of our enterprises. I'd like to show you with a pragmatic approach how we now operate at our regional level to implement our programs to help our companies in developing and innovating. But I would like to talk briefly about our efforts as public administration to move from traditional schemes of interventions like grants to more advanced form of public financial subsidies that we call financial engineering. In this second slide, you can see some macro data of our region. As you can see, our GDP represents almost the 10% of the GDP of Italy, and our region, as you can see in the next slide, is possible to define our region in a high-density entrepreneurship region because, as you see, we have more than 450,000 companies in our region, and most of them are very small. The regional acting is inside the strategy of Europe, and in particular the Europe 2020 strategy that, as you know, aims to boost the economy of the member states in the EU by promoting a model of smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. The objectives of the EU has set itself in relation to issues of employment, innovation, education, social inclusion and climate for 2020 were adopted at the national and the regional level, that is our level. With regard to innovation, the EU has identified the following main objectives: development of new technologies, pioneering research, access to high-speed internet, transport and smart energy infrastructures, energy efficiency and renewable energy, economic development, and skill and training. Next slide, please. In our region, there is a plurality of subjects, organizations that operate for innovation. We have regional government first that define the development strategies and may also act directly or indirectly through regional agencies. But we have an important public university system for education and basic and applied research. We have chambers of commerce. We have association of enterprises and their credit guarantees consortia. We have public and private research and technology transfer center, more than 80 in our region. Banking and financial system involved and rooted in the territory, more than 50 banks and 3,500 banks branches in our region. And also we have venture capitals, business angels, and business incubators. The large number of subjects ensures inclusiveness, of course, but may cause difficulties, in our opinion, in coordinating actions or waste of resources and efficiency. In our opinion, a possible solution that we are acting is to operate through networks. As I said, small and medium-sized enterprises represent 90% of companies in the Veneto region. And I think that innovation propensity of small and medium enterprises depends on many factors, of course, but always involve expensive investments for them. The availability of capital is therefore critical to maintain and increase the propensity of firms to innovate. Regional planning also can help enterprises to acquire external capital to be used for implementing innovative investment. The joint of public and private funds can also facilitate the participation of lenders and investors, reduce the cost of access to capital for enterprises, and in the last years, regional planning has been evolving towards more efficient means of finance support that I will show you. What we mean when we talk about financial engineering? We mean an integrated set of financial tools meant to bring more efficiency to public funds management by making renewable resources to small and medium enterprises available, and in the meantime, boosting additional financing. In the eye of the EU, it can also be seen as any form of financial support other than unrecoverable grants, and typical they are revolving soft loans, guarantees to make access to credit easier, and risk capital fund, and preferably to be jointly combined together. And the first example is how does works a soft revolving loan in our scheme. First, you can see the regional government can provide a fund manager with public financial means. The fund manager make available free of interest these funds through assessment of eligibility criteria to a partner bank. Public resources are mixed up with partner bank owns, and the interest rate charged to the borrower is mitigated by the presence of a public fund without interest. The bank, the end user borrowers get the medium-term loans whose overall cost is reduced. Reimburses installments, principal and interest in accordance with the amortizing plan. In this scheme, we can also have credit guarantee consortia that are private companies that provide guarantees to the financing. And the partner bank, at least, reimburse the regional fund to the fund manager, and you can see there is a revolving flow of money that can be used again for new investment. In our opinion, the benefits of this scheme are essentially structural, a continuously available amount of financial resources for enterprises, direct access to public funds by banks, no tender in this case, no depletion of public resources, because as we have seen, have only revolving feature, funds directly framed in current operation of involved financial institution. And then technical strong points, overall financial coverage in the eligible investment, direct and one-step incentive, no ranking, simple application form, and at least bankability. In this scheme, the regional government set the specific rules for the use of funds and decide beneficiaries, eligible investment, and so on, and can focus to sectoral focus, for instance, industries, to trade or handcraft, but also can focus with a specialization cross-sectionality, for instance, for research and development or for startups, or also with a geographical focus. Yeah? Too much? Okay, too much details. Now, thank you very much. Sorry, my enthusiasm. The second pillar of this scheme is the guarantee supply chain with the regional funds that provides, the regional government that provides funds to credit guarantees consortium or regional financial agency that for guarantees to enterprises. And then, at last, the risk capital fund made with the public regional fund to get mixed together with private fund. We have this experience now running in our region, and this is dedicated strictly for innovative investment by enterprises. At last, this value added, in our opinion, of financial engineering approach. They are sustainability over the planning horizon with a virtuous transition from grants to revolving funds, leverage with attract and combine with the private capital providers, the know-how, new sources of technical, financial, and managerial expertise for the economic development, and a stronger incentive for better performance for beneficiaries due to obligatory repayment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marco Zanetti. It is very interesting as I see what you're doing in the Inclusive Innovation Fund that we're doing is almost the same. We're using a small amount of government contribution to leverage 5 times private capital and do exactly that. Dr. Yaron? I would request everyone if we can keep our comments to maybe about 7 minutes, then we'll have enough time for some question and answers. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Let me start with my own background because, as you well know, we are all victims of our own personal experience. So I'll start by coming and saying that I'm a graduate of an Israeli university, the Hebrew University, bachelor's, master's, PhD, devised physics, did a lot of the original work in flash memory, and then like every Israeli at the time, I did what was considered to be the right thing, moved to the US, just a second, there's a way back, just a second, there's a way back. By the way, my father was a professor, so every 7 years we would go overseas. So the US wasn't new to me. I guess I'm the only one in the room that crossed the ocean with a boat and not with an airplane. Is there anyone that did it?
No, there's that.
Okay, same is roughly the right age. So it used to take 2 weeks to get there, but that was when I was a kid. When I had my own family, I ended up doing it in flights. And as I was telling Sam, we will know that we have accomplished something serious here when I will know by heart all the flights from Israel to India. Right now, you ask me about the flights from Israel to the Silicon Valley. I'll give you all airlines, timing, flight number, which seat I sit on, which is normally 3G. Okay, let's go down to the grassroots of the topic of discussion. In a sense, there's an oxymoron in the statement, financing innovation. Innovation to finance is not expensive. It really does not require heavy dollars. It's high risk, high reward. One of the reasons that the VC industry, in my mind, is not as successful as it used to be is that they're going for low risk and low rewards. And big surprise, you can make better money by investing in existing firms, and that's not where it started. I lived in the Silicon Valley in the days that the thing got started. The executives that founded National Semiconductor were from, founded Sequoia Capital, came from National Semi. And they're all executives in those firms. And what worked well was the financing of Cisco, of Intel. Cisco today is a brand name. At the time, it was a husband and a wife trying to communicate between 2 departments in Stanford. They decided, okay, we'll build a small box. Then another department wanted to get hooked up. Another department wanted to get built up. It's a family called Lerner. And all of a sudden, the router industry came about. Sequoia was there, Dan Valentine was there, put few bucks into it, and the rest is history. So what I'm trying to say, first of all, financing innovation doesn't require big checks. If you came with big checks, leave them aside. on the other hand, be willing to take risks. In terms of financing the bottom of the pyramid, I will tell you right now, being a veteran of the semiconductor industry, I have seen products go from 100x to 1x to 0.1x. This is the whole story of the semiconductor industry. Cost reduction is the name of the game, and I believe you don't necessarily have to design for the bottom of the pyramid, but you need to have, if you will, the cost reduction roadmap in mind, which the semiconductor industry is doing an unbelievable job. Now, in terms of how to go about it, in Tel Aviv University, and I'll describe, as I said before, we're all victims of our own experience, which to me is really a platform for doing what I did on the private life. In the private life, what I've done, invested my own money in the very early days, starting with 100,000. The biggest investment I've done personally is $5 million. And fortunately enough, 4 out of 5 ended up being sold and are doing very well. So there's a trick to the game, and the trick to the game is to be extremely involved in the early days. All my companies started with sitting in a small office with a table that's no bigger than 1 meter by 2 meters, sketching something on a diagram, thinking about it, coming back, drawing it again. It doesn't cost money. All it costs is some brain power, sitting down and doing it patiently. So I decided to do what I've done on the personal life to try and do it at the national level, and I felt that Tel Aviv University is a good vehicle to do so. And again, I hate innovation that's not in technology area, so I'm just copying and paste what happened to work very well in the Silicon Valley. There's one university that's responsible for the creation of the Silicon Valley. It's called Stanford. The president at the time figured that the right thing to do if you want to develop the economy is to open Stanford. If you go today to the cafeteria at Stanford, I'm willing to bet that at 50 to 70% of the tables in the cafeteria, you have a VC sitting with a professor. Tell me what you are doing. Let's move it, let's try to think about differently. No, that's not going to work. Let's try this, let's try that. So you really, in my mind, the better, faster, cheaper that used to work in the early days, I think it's dead. I think what you need to go is to grassroots innovation. And the way to do it, I'll share with you 2 experiments that I've done in moving the academic life into the industrial life. In one case, we scanned all labs. We did it in the Hebrew University, identified 30 projects that did make sense, reduced it down to 18, opened a baby seed fund where you would not invest in any project more than $250,000, and even that, if you will, against milestones of $50,000 each. You don't sign a check for $250 and the guys go to the beach. They have to sweat for every $50,000. Don't meet the milestone, thank you very much, no more money available. Out of 18 projects, and the criteria was not to generate a product. The criteria was to create this environment where a third party that just wants to make money will make money. So they will invest in the project. So we ended up identifying 18. We financed out of that, the 18 project. 16 ended up getting third-party financing. So this is the extremely high hit ratio, but it has to do with sitting close to the professors, providing guidance to them. In another experiment we did, it's with a company that I'm sure you well know in the pharmaceutical area, Hoffman La Roche. As you well know, most pharma companies are running out of the patent life, and there's just not enough innovation in-house. So we asked them, what are you interested in? They've mapped out several areas. We identified 8 companies. Out of the 8 companies, within 2 years, 2 they've licensed back, i.e. they had immediate need, against milestone payments that is in the millions. If we continue to execute, additional million will come again milestone, and if it becomes an ultimate product, there will be royalties. So 2 companies went in that direction because there was immediate need. 2 companies, Roche ended up investing with a VC back to back, and 2 companies were formed. 2 projects are still kind of in between. We don't know which way it's going to head. The jury's out. And 2, unfortunately, we had to close down, which is also a very good hit ratio. And the only reason for the high hit ratio is putting the people that understand how to build products. In that case, it was executives from Hoffman La Roche, that flew into Israel pretty much every quarter. We would sit from 8 o'clock in the morning, conduct operations review like you do it in a regular company. Yeah, there was a bit of tension from time to time because the professors would like to see academic freedom. And that's okay. You don't want to do it, it's fine. But there's no money available. And what you found out is that very quickly, interests were aligned. And I will tell you that there are several professors that are millionaires, not in a single million, but much more, as an annual income coming from royalties. Because the way we do it, every dollar that comes at the top, 40 cents goes to the professor, 20 cents go to the department, and 40 cents goes to the institution. I do believe that if you want to identify two areas that in my mind there's no other way to win and make money, one is cyber. I see a lot of cyber projects, and I'm telling you right now, it's deep, deep into the academia, studying algorithms and the likes, and one that will be able to crack the code on it, and there'll probably be several companies, will end up making a fortune. The other one where I see a lot of money being thrown away is in solar energy. Generically, silicon has an energy gap, those of you that know physics, of 1.1 electron volt. So it can capture only one wavelength. Unfortunately, the sun is white and it has a lot of wavelengths. So there's people start to contaminate a little bit to increase the efficiency and the likes. So I made 24%. Those are great, I'm making 25%. And there's 25.5%. But if you want to create grid parity, you need to go back to physics. And that's what we are pushing our professors to do. I can't tell you right now which project is going to make it to the touchdown line, but between all those innovations, one of them is going to make it. And my last comment, I understand that Sam is the only one here at my age. In the early days of the semiconductor industry, there was an argument. Is it going to be silicon or is it going to be germanium? And for a while, it was germanium, silicon, silicon, germanium. Germanium lost, silicon made it, and the rest is history. So the trick of the game is to invest not only money, invest time into it, and guide the innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent for the tips. Can we have you, Ms. Lama?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I was thinking about the topic which has the word inclusive in it, and I think it's very important that we actually focus on it, particularly in the context of India. So I agree with Mr. Petroda that a lot of the innovations and products that do come out do come for the wealthy. So when we're looking at inclusive, we in the World Bank Group are trying to say, how do we actually develop savings products for poor clients? And then more importantly, how do we have an efficient delivery system to ensure that they reach and are still affordable for the poor? And I'd just like to quote 4 examples where we've been involved as the World Bank Group and some of the lessons that we've learned from that. Some of you may well be familiar with M-Pesa, the mobile payments system that was used in Kenya. Now, one thing that most of these innovations share is the characteristic that there's always a necessity why you need it. In Kenya, security was an issue. People in the urban areas had to send money to the rural areas. Therefore, what they needed was a safe and secure system. The cashless mobile payment system was a response to it. So I think any innovation has to have a business need, and that would really make it stay. The second is an example again from Kenya called Jipange Kuseve, which actually tried to say that it's not just transfers of money, you also need savings products for the poor, and how do you get them to save? So it married a product that was used in Bangladesh called the P9, which was really a model of how do you lend to ensure savings. They married that with the mobile payment system. And there again, there was need for it because while transfers were possible using the M-Pesa system, there was no saving product and the market needed a saving product for the poor because the poor have no access to finance because they lack collateral, they lack the initial capital to start off. And that's what this product did. The third is a product that our private sector arm has started, and that is how do you use the products available in a certain environment to their maximum benefit. So for example, rice paddy is a product that's available in India, in many parts of India. How do you convert it to generate power? And then again, the poor do not have immense needs for power. They do not have access actually to many of the basic refrigerators or air conditioners or anything. They need power for some hours of the day in small mega packets. So what Husk Power was actually doing is serving a need to distribute small amounts of power to the local areas without heavy investment in transmission lines. The fourth is the village phone model, and this is a model that was used in Madagascar, where while cell phone technologies obviously rapidly developed, fixed line and cell phone was still just starting out, and they realized in Madagascar that in certain peri-urban areas and rural areas, hard to get phone service to be distributed, because even for a private sector provider of telecommunications, it has to be profitable. So they empowered certain women who would serve as really arms, who would not only sell phone services, sell data cards, but became really little kiosks that sold numerous services that then made it profitable for them to expand the cell phone. This model actually we tried to replicate with Idea Cellular in Maharashtra too. But obviously every country has its context and the various reasons for its success and why we had to customize it. So all this to say that in the Indian context, I think a lot of attention is being paid to how do we do more with less for more, the MLM model. Because the challenges here are huge. The infrastructure constraints that we have to overcome are much larger than anywhere else. And so therefore the necessity to not only look at product innovation, for example, the nano car is one which was probably a product innovation, process innovation. How do you reduce, what do you do in your process to reduce the final ultimate product price? And that is, for example, the philosophy here was that how can we make the mobile cell phone call charge the same as a postcard? And that really was the objective driving the entire revolution in telecom. On workflow innovation, Arvind Eye Care, how do you bring about a lower operating cost for cataract operation? So instead of performing it at metro hospitals, can we bring people from the village collectively so that they come to the point at which this operation is done? So all this just to suggest that there are many ways of really doing innovations, and some have worked in some environments. But I would like to make a very important point, and I think the government has a huge role to play in fostering innovation. And the role is really to improve regulatory environments, provide incentives, and actually delete lots of the obstacles at work here. Case in mind is if I look at the affordable housing sector and how it developed in Mexico and Brazil and Ecuador and so on, and what we're looking at in India. If people do not have land titles, they cannot use land as a means of getting a mortgage. How can the poor ever get access to a house? Then again, things like agri-insurance. Most of the farmers are the ones who face grinding poverty. They are subject to, climatic changes, rainfall. There isn't, irrigation in the country is quite low. So how do you ensure that a farmer is actually protected if his crop does not come out, and if he doesn't get the yield that he's got? Is there any kind of crop insurance that can be available? These are all financial products that are needed. Third is venture capital, and some of my previous speakers have spoken about it. How does anybody give angel capital to a business that's just starting out? It's a problem in most countries, but I think here, where access to finance is particularly a critical issue, and I say that because in my practice, we have $3.9 billion lent for SMEs, for microfinance, to the public sector banks, and we see the challenges that the poor face in accessing these. Now, I do want to, and again, some areas like warehouse financing, which are being brought about, the government has been very open to considering financial innovations in things like weather index, but I think there's room for more. In closing, I want to answer the three questions that were posed to me by posed to us on what are the source of funds. And this is because we worked with the US and the European social capital investors. Primary source of funds are the foundations and the corporates, really. But again, in the US context, the tax law is such that it encourages the allocation of money for investment into social investors. So it would not be enough, and it would be ideologically impossible to expect people to put in money into social investment unless the tax laws are such that they encourage this. Second is talent. Well, you're really competing with I would say people who work in hedge funds and investment banks and so on. But there is where the measurement of return is important, because the impact is not just the financial rate of return, it's a social rate of return. What do I mean by social rate of return? If I'm looking at the housing sector, how many people move from the informal sector to the formal sector? How many people who are unbanked become bankable? What is the incidence of decrease in sickness? It is a social parameter that needs to be considered. What is the increase in income levels of people? The wealth factor. So I think the poor, including rural, including unbanked, perhaps women, minorities, these are some of the parameters one would consider in looking at measurement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Meenakshi?
So I just want to say DFID is a department of the UK government, and we manage the UK's international aid programs across the world. It's quite recent that we've moved to looking at this particular instrument, which we call returnable capital, where we actually work with enterprises with the objective of realizing both profit as well as development results. And some of the reasons why we've been kind of looking at this more actively is because I think the VFM, the value for money that you can get, as Saurabh said, if you can invest in an enterprise and it can sustain even after you take your capital out, I mean, that's hard to resist. And there is a new emphasis on working with the private sector in the UK because they can create wealth and jobs. Our strategy, I mean, this is a program that we are actually piloting in India. So we do have the CDC, we own the CDC, but they are at the top end of this continuum between development and profits. And while they are reforming, we are trying out something much more ambitious in India. We'll be working with partners like the State Bank, SIDBI, and National Innovations Fund, and so on, to look at how we can actually get this combination in the 8 poorest states of India. It's no doubt difficult. You've mentioned how do you capture results, the development results. I think profit is not hard. We've been doing that for a long time. We have some ideas on how to do that. So for the project that's already been approved, which is around 35 million with the SIDBI, we have actually calculated economic value add. We expect every million that we invest to generate 20 million capture results, the development results. I think profit is not hard. We've been doing that for a long time. We have some ideas on how to do that. So for the project that's already been approved, which is around 35 million with the SIDBI, we have actually calculated economic value add. We expect every